recording, and then we're officially opening up our meeting for today. Again, Jaffe and others, make sure you have your first and your last name on it. And we don't have much to say other than we're excited to welcome our guest panelists. So we first have the panel of former students and with an addition from a new contact which we have from UC San Francisco. And after we have the panelists talking with hopefully a lot of questions and answers, then at 6 o'clock we switch over to a kind of workshop presentation on resume and interviewing. And without further ado, we'll start with our first panelist. So each panelist introduce themselves, what they're doing, and then we will be having our open Q&A. So our first panelist is Brent, and I only say Brent was a former student at Caltech LA. I'm really happy to see you here. He was an undergraduate, stayed for his master's program, awesome research, and always a love for the biotech industry. I may say maybe always, or at least for a while now. So Brent, tell us about yourself, and I stop sharing and you can screen share.
Sure. So, thank you for that introduction, Dr. Porter. Yeah, so I'm a fifth year PhD student at USC, just down the road from Cal State LA at the Health Science campus, and um, I really didn't expect to find myself here. I was somebody who, didn't know what they wanted to do. I bounced around through many different programs, and this was kind of a long period through my undergrad where I wanted to find something that, really resonated with me. And once I joined Dr. Porter's lab, I really liked working in the lab. It was something that I figured I'd try out. Um, and I really liked it. Then I thought maybe I would get my master's, and then from there I would, go into get a job in biotech, big pharma, something like that. And so I continued on my master's with Dr. Porter, and then near the end of my master's research, Dr. Porter was talking to me about um, continuing on, do a PhD, and it was something I was kind of bouncing around with in my mind. I had already done an internship at this point at a small biotech company, and I really liked it. And from there, I wasn't really sure about continuing on with school. I had already taken 8 years, I think, 7 to 8 years at that point to get a bachelor's and a master's degree. But I really found that I enjoyed the science, the research that I was doing, uh, owed in no small part to Dr. Porter. She is an incredible mentor. Um, but I really realized that, if I am enjoying doing this, I might as well continue on until I don't enjoy it anymore. Um, so I continued on, started a PhD just down the road, like I said, at USC. Been doing this for 5 years, and I got another internship along the way recently at a large pharmaceutical company. And now I'm planning on finally making that transition to industry. Um, so I figured I would share, since this, is about internships and stuff like that. I figured I would share some of the information that I got from my most recent internship experience. See if I can share this. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Cool. So, yeah, I've had two internship experiences to this point, one during my master's, one during my PhD, and they were wildly different. Um, the one during my master's was a small biotech company just down the street in Rancho Dominguez, Molecular Express, and it was a great experience because it was small. So the whole you get to wear a lot of hats kind of saying with a lot of small biotech companies definitely held true there. Um, and that was very good. I got to see, how it could help in different roles. Um, but it really didn't prepare me for working in a larger pharmaceutical company because when you have to wear a lot of hats at a small biotech company, you don't really get to dive deep like into the specific function that you might play at a large pharmaceutical company. And so this last summer, I got to do an internship in Boston at a large pharmaceutical company, and that was definitely an affirmatory kind of experience for me that I want to go into this industry. Um, but how is it really? I haven't really had exposure, and getting this exposure was just really nice. So. Um, I wanted to share some of the insight that I got. I'll skip over most of this is pictures of me in Boston because I got to live there for 3 months. So I'll skip through that really fast. But I got to interview and have one-on-one meetings with many people from different positions in these companies, and they shared with me different quotes that were very helpful for me, and I thought that that was a really good exposure that I got that I like to share with other people. So this is Boston, a lot of Boston. Really enjoy my time there. This is where I worked, much nicer, honestly, than a lot of the academic labs I've been in. It's just endless money. Okay, so the global head of the Drug Safety and Research Evaluation department. She had a master's degree. So I wanted to point that out to people who, might not want to continue on to PhD and might be concerned about, glass ceiling kind of things with your terminal degree. She's the global head of this department in a large pharmaceutical company. And she talked about how you can move out to non-research roles in companies more easily when you start with a research background. That's something that I saw a lot. You would find people who started with a STEM background and now they're working in business development, things like that. Um, Also, the idea of doing the grunt work is really magic for career growth. They really notice a lot of those things from, things that you think might go unnoticed. They really um, people notice that. Also, green flags focus on collaboration, um, examples of how you work with other people, because in the academic environment, it's very much so how you have a project, a research question, you need to focus on answering that. But in the pharmaceutical industry, it's very much so about how you work as a team. Um, you need to be able to collaborate to come together to answer problems. And also, this goes into don't hoard your skills. You're here to share expertise with the team. Um, Also, delegation is the hardest aspect when transitioning, and also dealing with imposter syndrome, especially as women in the pharmaceutical industry, was very hard for this person. So I won't spend too much time going into these, but just wanted to kind of show, like, from the higher level and on down, some of these words of advice from people that I wanted to pass on. Like I said, the unseen work is important to your success, career growth. Striving for input and good teams is common in big pharma. So there starts to be, some parallels with the advice that I got. Um, And also, this is something for people who want to go into a PhD and, potentially postdoc. This is important for me. Postdocs are becoming seen as industry experience and also um, focus on being an expert and being proficient at anything needed. So that's a big thing as well. Getting a PhD, getting a graduate degree is very much about you being a problem solver, not necessarily the specific skills that you have, but being able to come in and be a fixer, basically. So, yeah, I just wanted to share, some of those things that got passed on to me because I thought that was very, very invaluable information. that I received. And also, people ask me how I got these internships. People in my current lab are going through this process right now. I just I just went on to oh, my cord got stuck. I just went on to LinkedIn Jobs, looked around there, and I would start to get updates for things that seemed to fit my profile. So I would definitely recommend updating LinkedIn, doing a lot of your networking through there. I used to do a lot of what I would call like passive networking, where I would um, work well with others and develop a good reputation, and that would be something, like that's networking. That's what I just thought it was, and that's valuable. I mean, you have to show you're competent, but also you really need to have an active role in networking, and a lot of that happens on LinkedIn nowadays. So I would definitely recommend, building up your LinkedIn profile, interacting with companies and people working at companies that, align with your interests, your overall career goals, um, and really utilize LinkedIn Job Network for internship opportunities. That's where I found the Takeda one, and it it was a perfect fit for me.
Thank you very much, Brent. Uh, and the questions will come afterwards.
Great. Should I introduce Ishmael? Okay. Uh, great. I'm so excited to have Ishmael. He's an alumni from our Master's in Electrical Engineering program at Cal State LA, and I had the privilege of having Ishmael work in my research lab for his master's thesis. He did some really cool work. Generating a computational model for central pattern generators in the spinal cord, applying his mathematical background, applying some theory and geometric singular perturbation to this model development. And he was an applied mathematics and computation major as an undergraduate at San Diego State. So it was really fun to have him in the lab. We had some really great discussions, and he loved pontificating about the theory and the math behind the neural network. So that was always great fun. And aside from him just being an amazing engineer and computational scientist, I thought it would be great for you to hear from him because I could see that his internship that he did impacted him and helped him to develop a lot of skills that he brought into his master's thesis research. So I'm really pleased to have Ishmael here to share with you about his experiences.
Thank you, Dr. Wan. And I'm gonna share some sites. I just created sites for you guys. Yeah, like Dr. Wan mentioned, like my background's in applied mathematics. I have a BS in applied mathematics from San Diego State, and then electrical and biomedical engineering degree, master's degrees. And I've been working at over 5 years at the San Diego Supercomputing Center. It's a center that houses multiple supercomputers at a UC San Diego. And primarily the area that I've been working there is primarily in high performance computing, edge computing, cloud computing, and computing continuum, and then applying it to the different scientific disciplines. And primarily the place that I've been primarily working on is wildfire, prescribed burns type of simulations, and so forth. Some projects that I've been involved are these names probably you won't remember, but it's just one specific these four that I just thought of. It's Bumper 3D. It's a prescriber data and simulation driven platform. A platform that enables a lot of people that are prescribing burns or trying to prescribe a burn and kind of getting all the data analytics in one place so they could actually figure out if they're doing the right thing or not when they're burning. The other one is Sage. It's a platform that enables having AI at the edge, meaning at really rural areas, collecting data and processing and doing all these kind of things. The other one's more edge related, but it's more related to wildfire response and mitigation scenarios, and primarily using edge technology to basically sense things that are going on during either a wildfire, or an actual prescribed burn. And lastly, this is more of like more general. It's called the National Data Platform, and it's basically building the nation's federated data ecosystem. And all of them are housed at SDSC and so forth. Just to give you a background of the stuff that I've been working on, very different from what I worked on in the past, but it's just building on top of what I've already learned and so forth. So my internships were at Sandia National Laboratories. Sandia is one of the three research and development laboratories of the United States Department of Energy and National Nuclear Security Administration. And primarily what they do is a lot of areas, but more a lot of research and development, and primarily dealing with the national security in some aspect. Sometimes things are being pivoted into meaning that that's for national security. And so like I worked in this division that was primarily for creating software for a lot of different places at the labs. But the primary one that I was working on, the scientific application, was in computer tomography and X-ray imaging for non-destructive testing. And during that time, so the way that I got connected through that was through an alumni at San Diego State that I just started talking to, because they actually went through the same program that I did when I was an undergrad, which was the NIH MARC program there. And he was an alumni from that program that I just started talking to, because he was also an applied mathematician with an applied math background. And that's how I got connected. And then that's how I was offered an internship. At that time, the NIH MARC program was paying for the whole thing. So those 3 months it didn't cost them anything. It was more about me going there, just being a research fellow, and then just working on some specific scientific problem. And what I worked on is primarily was on developing and implementing a high performance custom CUDA C++ software solution for generating artificial X-ray images, and primarily in the area of non-destructive testing. And then it's primarily was to actually make it really efficient, since you're going to use these kind of things on the field. And then after it was very successful. Like I was able to learn a lot of things during the internship, and then right away apply it within those 3 to 4 months. And I was my mentor that was at Sandia also asked me if I wanted to come back for the following year, and that's where I actually became a year-round intern, and was there from when I was starting at Cal State LA, and then afterwards, and in that area, so that was the funding at that time was through TSA. So I was working more of like with sensitive data related to TSA. So a lot of image analysis going around data that was about related to that. So my task was to kind of create this computer vision test bed for them to enable like very critical metric computation. And that required me to obtain like a DOE L level clearance to actually handle this sensitive data. And I wanted to kind of provide you kind of like impacts and lessons learned, kind of like during my internship. Like I learned a lot. It was a great experience. Stressful sometimes when I was in the master's program, because I was trying to juggle both of them. It was great because like I think it really helped me learn a lot, and also being able to right away learn something and apply it. And also like I think the other part kind of allowed me to explore my interest in high performance computing, which is kind of like where I ended up in my current employment. Some lessons learned, I think the importance of hands-on experience in technical fields, I think that was pretty neat to actually, especially with the TSA project, it was pretty neat to actually have like very hands-on experience and dealing with that type of data. For the same project, I think I also learned a lot of teamwork because there was a lot of people involved. It was probably my first introduction of working in a very collaborative and a very cross-disciplinary type of project. And some advice that I'll kind of give you provide is I the seek internships early and also apply widely, and definitely on like use all those like the networking applications that are out there like LinkedIn and so forth. They're very good at just being able to connect with people, and also don't be shy to just send an email. I mean, like what I did in the beginning was just when I was an undergrad, just ask questions about like how was your experience to an alumni from San Diego State, and then just from there just it converted into like a do you want to work at Sandia for just the summers? So yeah, try to network professionals and mentors in the field. So I'll leave it at that.
Thanks so much, Ishmael.
I'll go ahead and present and give a little background for Dr. Rupa Ramamurthy. So Dr. Rupa Ramamurthy is currently the director of Catalyst and Invent Fund programs at UC San Francisco, and also manages the Catalyst internship program. She obtained her undergraduate degree in chemical engineering from the Indian Institute of Technology, Mumbai, and completed her PhD in biochemical engineering from Caltech. I'll leave it off to Dr. Rupa Ramamurthy.
Hello, everyone. I know it's late in the evening, and I want this to be interactive. So first and foremost, like no career is a straight line, okay? I did my undergrad, and I'm going to give you the lowdown. So y'all, like when I went into IIT, I really didn't know what was chemical engineering, but my rank let me get chemical engineering. I really wanted maybe computers or whatever. But I did well. I stood second in my class. Then I went to Caltech for my PhD. And when I was in the PhD, my advisor moved to Switzerland. So I switched advisors, had to work on a different project. Then when I was in pharma at Bayer, they were like merging, the situation became challenging, and I knew I didn't really want to keep doing experiments. I wanted to do something else. And that's when I started exploring. I did some science and technology consulting. And then I went into global health because I come from India and I wanted to do something in that area. And then they wanted me to move to Seattle. I didn't want to move. And then I looked at UCSF and used my skills, which was similar. So it's like you keep building your skills, building your background, and how to leverage what you have to go to different roles. And what I would say for internships, important to be strong in whatever you're doing, but network, meet with people, speak with people, ask if they have internship opportunities. Some of the places and like I know in the Bay Area, like there's the Association for Women in Science. You can go there or just reach out. If you have alum in certain companies, reach out, ask them if they have internship opportunities. And the other thing is networking. The other thing what you're going to be coached on is resume, preparing for the interview, being prepared, and always highlight what makes you unique, right? It could be the challenges you've gone through. It could be a lab that you've learned. It is some outside experience. But always focus it on what is relevant to the organization. And when you go to an interview, do not just give the answers, but show your curiosity. Ask them more about what their day is like, what they are doing, what are their challenges. And the other thing is we have the Catalyst internship program, where we have grad students, postdocs, senior undergrads. They work with Catalyst awardee projects to understand how to put together target product profiles. Target product profiles are like if you have a therapeutic medical device diagnostic, designing with the end in mind, so that even if the project is early, you think of the regulatory, what would your clinical trial look like? How would you get reimbursed? What is the competitive landscape? What is unique about your product? So, and we have a lot of lectures on intellectual property, etc. It's not a paid internship, it's about 30 hours, but there's a lot of learning in the summer. And if any of y'all are senior undergrads or master students and want to explore this opportunity, your faculty advisors, I'll forward it to them.
and y'all can apply. So those would be my words, and I'm happy to continue with the discussion.
Thank you so much. And then we'll be opening up now the room with questions. And let's try to put our panelists maybe, oh yeah, I can make 3 spotlights. So now I have to find Brent. Okay, I will spotlight you too. Dr. Won showed me how to do this. So we have now our speakers all together. And you can either put your question in the chat, or you can raise your hand and unmute, and we can start. So maybe we have some questions to start. And don't be shy.
I have a question.
Yes.
My question is directed at Ismail, actually. I was just wondering, because I'm very interested in going to UCSD to pursue a PhD, but I don't have much research experience, and I'm trying to get more experience so that I can be more prepared and apply through there eventually. So did you just message like a random alumni when you were looking for opportunities, or how did you go about like finding the person that you connected to?
So the individual came to I think they came for like a kind of like this kind of event, like a panel, and then like I just learned about him, and it was like, well, he's the only person that I know right now that is applied mathematician that went here and then actually continue off and worked at a specific company. So it was through these type of events that I connected with that person. I think now, I mean, back when I was an undergrad, we didn't have LinkedIn, so you could also just go on LinkedIn and just connect with people from UCSD, and try to see if you could find someone that is like matches your specific interest. A lot of people reply to you to emails. So when I was in the master's program, I emailed someone from University of Pittsburgh related to my research project, and they replied to me. They were like very happy to just help me. So like people are very are nice and like email back. So even if you like have a question that you feel like maybe they won't answer, they will.
Okay, cool, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I just ask Brent also, did you, like you said, you went to Takeda, and if I understood right, you kind of utilized LinkedIn as well? Like, how did you decide on making the first contact? And can you maybe share what did you actually say in your contact email or contact wording?
Yeah, I didn't reach out separately to find that internship opportunity. It was basically it was actually the last internship I applied to, but I set up on LinkedIn to get updates for potential job opportunities, but they're kind of listed, similarly, internships and job opportunities. And um, based on what I was interested in, which at that time and still right now is microphysiological systems or organ on chip work. Um, so I basically just cold applied, but really a field that there's not a lot of relevant expertise right now because it's pretty niche. But I can personally see that it's something that is definitely growing right now. So I've really focused on putting my eggs in that basket. So from that perspective, kind of like some the other presenters were talking about, like really highlighting your skills. So I really tailored my resume for sure for that application to highlight my organ-on-chip work, and I just cold applied. Um, that one I saw it was reposted, so it was up for a month and a half, and then it was reposted a couple of days before I applied. So I figured, they probably didn't find anybody during the first initial round. And then from there, I saw that the hiring manager actually viewed my profile. I was like, okay, that's, probably a good sign. And then I got an email asking to interview. So in that regard, I didn't separately, try to contact people at the company or specifically the hiring manager or anything like that. It was more so trying to really tailor my resume for that specific application. Because in the past, I was applying and I had gotten some interviews for general, like immunology, uh, pharmacology focused work, which, is my background. But this was something where I could see that I was really like, I could slot in well. So I really focused on uh, tailoring my resume to that.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Actually, just to follow up, were there things on, so, like, for example, Ishmael's connection, that helped him to get his resume, for example, to a warm body and sort of attention on it. But what are some things that you think were key factors in getting the internship? Like, was it something on your resume, your organization of your resume, certain experiences, or what do you think were some key factors in getting securing the internship?
Yeah, so one thing I realized when, I mean, like developing a resume from scratch is kind of daunting. I know lots of people who, have all these different templates. They go on Etsy and they like pay a few dollars to get like a nice, template and stuff. Um, but I'd also heard that at USC Career Center they have resources to look at your resume and kind of work through developing a resume with somebody. So I went onto the USC Career Center site and they actually have I didn't get to talk to somebody about it. They had like AI implemented, but they had like templates, and the templates were very clean, very easy to work with. And then you essentially input all the relevant information, and then the AI system will kind of, flag typical things like, oh, the wording of this is too long. You're using these descriptors too much. And it's kind of developed to try to get you past like the initial screening process with a lot of resumes, because a lot of these large companies will have these, they look for like key terms and stuff like that. So it helped me to, get it presentable to that point. But from there, I realized, you know, I'm being given a template from the company in terms of the job description. So I really focused on highlighting like where what I do already really aligns with what they did. So I applied to um, the investigative toxicology department. They were focused on validating a liver on chip platform to better uh, assess candidate therapeutics for drug development. I work on a liver on chip, but I work on it in infectious disease. Infectious diseases are not really uh, that relevant, unfortunately, in the pharmaceutical industry, which is something, personally I've had to come to terms with as somebody who, started in microbiology. But learning how to kind of reorient what I did, which is something that, big pharma might not find that useful, um, in terms of, fighting bacterial infections, because antibiotics, are made and stuff like that, but that's not really where a lot of big pharma focuses on. But I'm making an organ on chip model system that is evaluated, validated to be physiologically relevant. That in itself is highly transferable to a toxicology department. So I really highlighted that aspect that I knew they would be interested in. So kind of combining the resources I had available from USC, the Career Center, and then also finding, the overlay, like what they would find useful and really focusing on that, I think was the reason that I got an interview.
Thank you. Are there
I
other
have another
questions?
question for Dr. Ramamurthy. How do you position yourself as a better like PhD candidate or even better like internship candidate in the application process? Like when you go and apply for like these summer research programs, a lot of the times like talk about yourself and like how you can make an impact on that summer research program. How do you position yourself better for that, for a chance to get in?
I would pick up with what Brent said about your resume. Try to see if there, I don't know if there are resources at Cal State LA, how to polish your resume. Like, for example, we have this program with a city college San Francisco where they prepare their resumes, and then we have the Zoom interviews where they get critique from professionals on their resume. Because what I found, at least in that program, is people highlight a lot of things that are not just relevant for the position. And you don't want to just talk about totally, like if it is relevant, if it's something relevant, yes, and how to highlight your strengths. That is very important. And then in the interview, one is politeness, courtesy. Try to have read up about the organization, present what you've done, but also show eagerness, enthusiasm, and always follow up once you've finished with a quick email, thank you for taking the time, and maybe 1 point or 2 points from the interview that you remember or that stuck with you. And also have questions to ask them, like could be what is their day, what are their challenges, where do they see you fitting? So you show curiosity, not only what they ask you, but you can ask them. So make it a conversation. Those would be some of my advice. And don't be nervous. Just remember, I am well prepared.
Thank you.
I have a question. Um, so I wanted to know from each and every single one of you. So what are the skills that you can say are needed in these internships? Because every internship has like a specific required set of skills that you need. But from all the internships that you've had, what skill sets would you say are required skill sets that we students need to have in this internship?
Actually, I couldn't hear it very clearly. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. So I was saying, can you hear me now?
Let me try to put my own thing louder. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was asking so what set of skills are required in these internships? Because different internships require different set of skills. So I was wondering, like from the internships that you guys have had, what skill sets would you say are required to have to work in these internship positions?
So if I can jump in, yeah, the internship skills are specific for different positions, but also at this level, you're an undergrad. So you go to the internship to develop skills. So the broad things that you do want is being a team player, communicating well, being a hard worker, showing enthusiasm, because those are skills across whichever internship you do. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, I was basically gonna echo that. One thing that I've like, yes, there's gonna be specific skills that are valuable for that specific role, but so much of it comes down to if you're easily trainable, if you're easy to work with, because it's very much so, being a team player for achieving, a similar goal. And that goes so much further than just being very good at some specific hard skill. I also train a lot of people in my PhD right now, and I see that all the time. It's the people who are able to communicate when they know something, when they don't know something, have the confidence to be able to speak up if you don't know something, and don't, just feel like this is stupid, I should know this. Like it makes it so much easier for the person that you're training um, to know, where they stand through that line of communication. Because so many skills, like they're learned on the job. So if you can show that you're somebody who is eager and willing and being able to communicate how you're learning these things, that goes a very long way.
Yeah, I would like to resonate with what Brent said. Is the soft skills are very, very important. The hard skills, like a lot of people could get trained, but the soft skills, like at the end of the day, to have like a person that is a team player that you get along and it's not hard to work with is very important. Um, when I was there, I saw a lot of people not being asked to come back because usually the program usually allows you or kind of tells you towards the end like, oh, we're really interested in like for you to come back the next year and so forth. Um, and a lot of the people that that were telling me that they were not coming back was just people that were like, we're not having those very important soft skills. And I think yeah, that's very important. In terms of the hard skills, like I think for at least in my field where programming is just essential, like it's good to know some languages, but like sometimes in the internship it's also like your way of learning other computer languages or other type of software that you're probably not familiar with. And so I think that's one of the very important parts.
And because this just came up yesterday, I was talking to my girlfriend about this. Like, what I feel like a lot of people experience, I've definitely experienced this wherever I've worked, is you will get people who they can get the answer themselves, but they just default will go to their superior or go to another coworker and just try to get the answer immediately. And one thing that I really applied in my both internships really is um, like take a crack at it yourself first. Um, I was planning an experiment last summer at my last internship, and my boss had all the answers, how to do all these dilutions, how to prepare all this stuff. But she gave me the general experimental layout, and I was like, okay, I don't need to ask her how to do all this stuff. I can figure out how to do all these myself. I made an Excel calculation of all the dilutions I needed, and then I just ran it by her. Like, is this what you basically just getting her to verify. She could have given me the answers to all that. Um, there wasn't really a rush in time. Um, she could have given me the answers quickly, but I wanted to show initiative. Like, I don't need to ask you for this, but you obviously need to verify before I start running these experiments with these expensive primary cells and stuff. Um, and that went a long way to show a little bit of autonomy also in my role because you will, depending on, the internship, you will get opportunities to show a little bit of autonomy. And if you can, show that you don't need to be handheld through every step of the way, but also being communicative when you don't know the answer, um, I think is very valuable and really shows, the next step. This internship, can potentially be a dry run for your employer on how you are as an employee. And so giving them, those opportunities to see you excel, in a position where you don't need to be handheld, I think is very beneficial.
Do we have from the students more questions? You can also put them in a chat if you can't speak. That's your time to ask. I actually was wondering whether, I mean, we know we want to talk about how you get into internships, but could you maybe also address, and that's for Ismail and Brent in particular, how you felt when you were doing the internship. What's the difference between being in academia or a research lab when you are in the internship? Like, what was something you had to learn being there?
You want to take that first, or?
Yeah, I could take it. To me, the part that was interesting is it was a national lab, and there was designated areas where you couldn't go without actually having like a chaperone go walk with you. So I think there was a lot of rules in terms of like not going into areas that you're not supposed to. I think the other one was realizing that you're kind of considered an employee as an intern. And so there's certain rules in terms of like that you cannot do. Like for example, like I I didn't know that you couldn't like pick up like a water jug. Like I think it's a half water jug just because it's a hazard if you like mess up your bag or anything. I think like the rules component was very eye opening because of like coming being in academia. There's like nobody talks about these kind of things, and so like being at the national lab where there's a lot of secrets and a lot of things that are going on that you can't go to. I think that was very eye opening. I think the other part is being ahead of deadlines was very important as well at the national labs, because everything you like, for example, for publications, you had to go get someone to, or even a presentation, poster presentation, you had to go and get someone approval to make sure that it was actually not like saying something that's not you're not supposed to. Also for sensitive data, I think that's the other part that was eye opening, at least being at the national labs. Yeah, I think that's everything I could think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, I would say going from academia to big pharma in particular. First thing that stuck out to me was that Dr. Porter, you would probably appreciate this. PPE is very much so not a recommendation. It is, it is a requirement. Um, there are certain regulations that you just have to follow. Um, you have to follow. And um, during my first week, I had to basically do a whole week of onboarding. I got instruction on how to interact with social media and stuff, what posts you can like or comment on or can't comment or like on LinkedIn, things like that. And that was kind of eye-opening to me, like that all these rules are there for a reason. Somebody's commented on a LinkedIn post. When they shouldn't have, and it, caused problems for the company. But it was very much like a transition into a corporate environment that I think carries over a lot to any corporate environment, that, anybody going into that environment's gonna learn. Um, but past that, I would say making you think about higher level things, um, in terms of research and how you want to present like your goals, what you're doing, why you're doing them, was quite different than in academia. We had to give like 7-minute presentations on what we've been doing for the last 4 years in our PhDs, me and the other PhD interns. Um, None of us were used to that. We're used to like 40-minute presentations on what we've been doing. It's 4 years, but the people you're presenting to, they don't know what you're doing. They have a scientific background, but they need the distilled narrative for what you're talking about, um, and why it's important. So that was very eye-opening. And also, yes, like Ismail was saying, like the deadlines, understanding like what goes into hitting certain deadlines and how the deadline goal was reached, and being honest and communicative when those cannot be hit, and why, and really how just research works differently in that environment. You really need to learn how to communicate your science, and focus on the narrative of why you're doing what you're doing and the value creation behind it. Um, and these are all things that you can't quite learn in class. You have to, have that experience, which is why doing the internship process is really looked highly upon by future employers. They want to see that, you've actually dipped your toes into that environment. And once you get those internships and you go on to apply, I mean, you might get a job from that internship because they've gotten to see you. Um, and that is, I mean, hiring people is very difficult. So getting that opportunity to see you as an intern is invaluable. But also, if you want to apply for jobs down the road somewhere else, they can now be your reference. You have now built up your network there. But yeah, I would say the biggest thing, difference transitioning from academia into these industry roles is very much so the science communication, and that's always been the hardest part for me. Something that, was trained into me at Cal State LA and now at USC, but kind of in a different perspective. I mean, it is ultimately a business, so you need to also factor that in to your science communication, and that distills into everything that you're doing day to day. So really focusing on that as you carry out your day-to-day roles.
Awesome, great. There's Dr. Porter, are you going to read Brian's question?
Oh, you can do, you are already
Oh, okay.
talk.
All right. Brian was asking, for those of you without research experience, what would be the best way to demonstrate being a team player on a resume, extracurricular activities? Actually, Dr. Ramamurthy, because both Ishmael and Brent have had research experience, and I forgot to say that Ishmael's actually an lsamp alum. So, but Dr. Ramamurthy, what would you say to those who don't have research experience?
See, are there other people, like I work well in a team. I played basketball, I'm just saying, in a team, or like other team experiences where you worked well and cohesively. It could be a volunteer experience where you worked as a team. It could be like we worked at this food bank and we worked collectively together. Or even if it is not like a internship experience, in a class lab or working on a class project together. All that counts as teamwork.
Yeah, definitely like senior design projects, but also student org projects if you're working in student orgs. Dr. Murthy, could you expand on like, because do you help review the applications for the Catalyst program and like have an idea of how you decide who to accept?
See, we accept quite a broad range of students as long as they show interest and they're interested in the internship. Ours, like we want someone who's a senior undergrad or beyond. So that's our criteria.
Mhm.
And the one thing I would say where I have been disappointed, this is a volunteer position you apply. When you apply, you should be motivated and continue the program. Especially in the last 2 years, we found half the people drop out. So to think about, is this and I have no problem if you have a family emergency, you have some other issues, to write and say, sorry, I cannot do this internship or I got something else. But people who just don't show up,
Right.
so that if there's a team of 6, it's 3 people who are carrying the load. And I always tell the PI when they're presenting, just feature the 3 people who actually participated. And so that's something you'll all need to think. Like if I'm applying for this internship, if it's a volunteer one, or it's no, like, am I going to show up? Am I really interested in it if I get it? And if you don't want to, you can get it and say no. But that, like not showing up, doesn't create a good impression.
And sorry, just real quickly, if you we only have like a minute or two left, but if you could very briefly just maybe give some examples of the what interns gained through the Catalyst program.
Yeah, what they
like
gained is learning about translation, interacting with the PIs, interacting with the teams, experience presenting, learning about translation, listening to the talks on IP, regulatory, other things, and working as a team, putting together the target product profile, presenting to the advisors.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. We have still some questions in the chat, but I was hoping that Brent, they're both specifically related to you and the biotech program, that you would put your answers into the chat so we can move on to our next segment after we have thanked our panelists a lot for taking the time. On a busy day. We are all so busy. So I would encourage we all clap our hands or put up those reaction boards for our panelists. And thank you so much. And we do have your, if you would put your contacts information, please, your emails in the chat, Rupa and Ishmael and Brent. So for follow-up questions that perhaps students could email you, that would be wonderful. And for you, we have already the flyer, but it might be if you wouldn't, yes, perfect. And then our students can take note. And if you have any follow-up, think of the networking, then please do reach out to our panelists. And thank you so much. And we are switching to, and of course, everybody is welcome to stay, but we are switching now to Maria Moran, a CalSat alumna, who will give a little bit more detail on the whole process of your resume and your interviewing. So Maria, I need to spotlight you. Here you are. So let me add you to the spotlight. And I can release the other panelists from being right up there full blown. So let me take you
And
out.
could we leave now?
Yes, we thank you for being there.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rupa. Thank you. And welcome, Maria.
Hello, thank you for having me. Now, would you like me to share my
I think that
screen?
would be easier for you because then you can move the slides how you want to.
Perfect. Let me see if this will work. Everyone see my screen now.
It's slow. Yes.
I'm gonna see if I can present. There we go. Okay. So, hello everyone. Like Dr. Porter said, I am a Cal State LA alumna. I have been now in recruiting and the sales side of recruiting for about 10 years. So I pivoted out of biotech and out of the lab and ended up on the business side. So it just gives a little bit of an alternative of what you can also do. But my focus today is going to be helping you guys with your resumes, some tips, tricks, and just things that when we talk to students that are coming out of college and starting to go into, you know, the workforce, some things that we always correct on resumes and some advice that we give to give you the best opportunity to stand out with the positions that are available for you. Just a little bit of a background. I'm with Yo Life Sciences. We're a specialized recruiting company for the life sciences. So we focus on lab services, research and development, quality. So anything that has to do with big pharma or diagnostics, that's my specialty. Just to give you a little bit of a background, let me give you a background of what we do, just so when you see companies like mine, you're not thrown off, because a lot of the times recruiting companies based on, you know, what maybe our parents say, they have a bad rep, but when it comes to science and specialty recruiting companies, it's very different. It's companies hire us to find candidates for them, either because they don't have the workforce internally to find a big pool of candidates, or it's just something they don't focus on because they want to focus on the science and don't want to focus on the work that it sometimes takes to hire someone and to put them on the bench. So Yo has been in the life science space for 30 plus years. We at any point are helping more than 30 companies throughout the US. And we placed about 3,500, a little bit over 3,500 candidates just last year.
Wow.
Okay, so your resume. Just a few distinctions between a resume and a CV. CV is when you are trying to go into more detail about your academic history, any academic accomplishments, any publishings that you've done, or anything you've done, any posters, anything like that. Publications go on a CV. So it's a very detailed, long version of a resume. The resume, which is what typically any type of any company or any what we call hiring managers look for, is a resume, right? It's a brief overview of what you've done up to the point where you're interviewing, whether that's a job. You guys are all in college, so any job you've had during college is a good one to have, a good thing to have on your resume. You should keep it to 1 page if you're still just doing your undergrad. Because you don't have a long working history, it should not be longer than a page. Unless you're going into detail, if you're doing in a research lab and you want to go into detail as to what you've done there, then you can include that just to give you a little bit of an extra boost with that. Okay, so there's two distinctions. Sometimes I get candidates who email me something that says CV, and I'm like, wait, you have to change it to it's your resume because your CV is all mostly academic. So your layout, I review resumes daily, and I've been doing this for some time, so I can review a resume in probably 10 seconds and tell you if it's going to work or not for the position. We get over 100 resumes for one position, and it's a glance, right? It's if the layout, it's not going to go well with the manager that's going to be hiring for it, I have to throw it back to the candidate and say, hey, this needs to be more concise. This is the first impression that you're giving a manager, right? So you want to make sure that you get someone's attention within the first few seconds, whether that's your layout, whether that's making sure it looks neat, making sure it looks organized. The organization on your resume translates into how organized you're going to be on the bench. It's a translation that you wouldn't expect, but it is. It just makes sure that you have good formatting, make sure you have good punctuation, make sure you have grammar. Everything needs to be very well put together because you never know what a manager will be looking at. Okay, so no photos, no images. Bullet points are your friend. You want to keep it concise. You want to keep it with the highlights of said position that you're listing. And you want to keep it, here we have a kind of a rule of thumb. It's 1 page per 5 to 10 years of work experience. I do get resumes that are longer, but those are candidates that are associate director levels that have maybe gone through 5 different companies in the last 10 years of their careers, that it usually also includes any academic achievements that they had. Make sure that everything's listed in chronological order, most recent on the top. If it's work-based, if you want to highlight, since you're a student, if you want to highlight what you're doing in your research lab, you put it at the top. And then you list any jobs that you've had during your time at school. That's what I did when I graduated, was I put anything that I had done academically, my skills, anything that translates into industry, that was at the top because that was what I was going to be doing.
versus my jobs that I had while I was in college. That just shows that I'm active and I'm working, and those are the soft skills that one of the last panelists were talking about. It kind of shows your personality based on what type of positions you've had. Okay, for the sake of this, make sure that you're writing what instrumentation you are well versed in, what instrumentations, assays, or procedures you've done, and that you can speak on. So if you've done it, most of us obviously have labs when we're in science majors, right? Your labs, make sure that if you're able to speak on them, they're on your resume, because that during the interview process, which I'll talk about later in this presentation, they might ask you about that. And you don't want to put something on your resume that you can't explain. It could be a simple procedure that for the manager, it's something that's just basic knowledge. But if you stumble upon those and you get stuck for any reason, you don't want them to think that it's because you actually don't know the procedure. And one of the other panelists made a very good point. Sometimes everything can be taught, right? Most of the things that we do in a lab is just the fundamentals for what you're going to do in a company, because it's so much more elaborate. There's so much, sometimes they're layered based on whatever research they're doing or whatever testing they're doing. So you just want to make sure that you can speak on what is on your resume. Okay, so leveraging your network. Did I skip a couple? No, sorry. I think I put it in a different order. In-person networking. This type of panel or discussion is a great place to network. You're meeting panelists, you're learning about other people's experience. It's good to stay connected, get any questions answered. There's also in-person networking events. I know I was at a biotech company or biotech event that you guys held there. That was a great network. I was able to connect with some candidates. Some candidates got practice during doing interviews. And I believe even one of them was sent to a client and might have had an interview with one of our clients in our past. So it all came down to, she approached me, she showed me her resume, we tweaked it a little bit, and I get to even introduce her to other people in my industry, which creates a bigger network, right? You never know who you're gonna meet at these events. These are some of the regional groups that are local to LA. California Life Sciences Association, I don't know why I put associate. Biocom California, and Women in Bio Los Angeles. Wow, my copy and paste skills were terrible at this time. Women in Bio Los Angeles is an organization that I'm a big part of. We're a new chapter established in LA. And we host a lot of events that are free to students. So it allows for good exposure to some of industry's professionals. And we've held them at either Bioscience LA, which is in El Segundo, which might be a little bit far, but we've considered holding one at the incubator there at Cal State LA. So if we do end up using that location, I will definitely email you, Dr. Porter, and then you can share it with your students. And I think last year also we held a virtual event at my last company, and some of your students went to that. So that was a good networking opportunity for them. Leveraging online networking tools. A big one is LinkedIn. I think one of the last panelists said, add me on LinkedIn. It's a great resource. You get to see, as a student, if we had LinkedIn at the capacity that LinkedIn is at now, I think it would have been a great exposure tool, just because you can see what people study. They put what they went to school for, and you see their career trajectory and what positions they've held from the beginning to where they're at now. It's a great tool for anyone who's trying to figure out what they want to do after school. It's also
a lot of the people on there, if you reach out to them just out of curiosity as to ask them about how they got to that point, a lot of them are open to that type of conversation. So building your LinkedIn profile is something that I highly recommend. We also use it as a tool to find people based on the skills that they list on there. So a lot of people post open positions through there. I know this panel is more about internships. I have seen a good amount of companies that post their internships on LinkedIn that you might not have access to otherwise. So that is a great tool to have. It gives you jobs and internships. And it'll give you alerts if you follow a company that you might be interested in working at or just curious about them in the future. You can always follow that company and it'll give you news. It's like a social media platform where they give you the news that's going on with that company. So that's always a good one to do. This is an example of what we see when we're looking for someone. We can put any type of skills in here, years of experience, what type of education they've had, their first name, last name, what the network looks like, what industry, what school they went to. Some companies know what schools have certain professors that teach a certain way. Therefore, they ask us, can you get students from this school? So we go and sometimes add the school so we can pull everyone that's on LinkedIn that went to that school. And then based on what job titles, locations, the skills, this is what I was talking to you about your resume. What skills you have, we look at that. Sometimes you can also have your resume posted on LinkedIn in your profile. So it's an easy access for anyone who might be, who might be looking for candidates like yourselves. So it's always a good one. If some of these internships are very competitive, so sometimes even having a clean LinkedIn profile is a big thing. Like the other panelist said, once you have a LinkedIn and once you're in a setting where you're with the company, you do have to abide by their rules because you are representing the company in mass for a mass audience in that space. So you have to be careful what you comment or what you like or what you reshare, that it make sure it aligns with the values of the company. So AI in your job search. I know we're moving into the age of AI. It's very predominant. I know because we have AI tools that we are using now. We're piloting a bunch of them just to see if it's going to align with what we need. So I want to make sure that you are using AI in the best way where it doesn't hinder you from positions or internships in this case. Using AI for your job search, I always recommend use it as a tool, not just copy and paste it. I'm sure there's already, that's always the rule of thumb, I think, in every sense of using AI, is you want to use it as a guidance or as a way to just help you, right? I always get writer's block. So AI for me is like the best. If I can't for some reason put words together, AI kind of gives me a start and then my brain just keeps going, right? So I always make sure that I'm just using it as maybe a starting point. AI, you can use AI to make sure that your resume includes the keywords from the job description. Of course, do not add any keywords that AI tells you to that you cannot speak on. That's always making sure that we stay aligned on that. Last thing you want to do is get that type of note on we have what's called applicant tracking systems, which it just keeps a history of when you've applied, what positions you have applied to. We write notes about candidates. Companies have set up applicant tracking systems as well, and they write notes after interviews. So you want to make sure that you never have a note that says has something on his resume, could not speak on. Managers know when you're nervous, and that's the reason why you can't speak on a certain skill, but you don't want it to come off as you're presenting something that you're not on a resume. So making sure that you use it to draft sections of your resume, or maybe help with your cover letter if you're looking to do a cover letter. Making sure sometimes you can ask AI to help you find positions that are posted online that you're interested in, whether it's a specific study or a specific type of medicine that you might be interested. If you're passionate about cancer, there's so many companies that are focused on that space. You can ask them to see if there's any positions that are open. What any platform does, they'll pull from the internet, right, and then show you what those positions are. That's a great way to do it. But always use it as a tool, not as your resume builder per se. It also can pull salary analysis just to make sure. I think this is a little bit ahead of where we are now, but a lot of the times I'm using AI to, for example, to make sure that a company, when I'm consulting a company or when I'm giving advice, their salary is matching up with what the industry standard is. Right? We have databases, but sometimes AI can pull from databases that maybe I don't have access to. So I use it as a cross reference to make sure that I have the right information. You also don't want to get you also want to make sure that you're staying within a competitive salary when that comes. Cautions. Downsides to AI, you don't want to lose your voice, because then you're not going to represent yourself accurately. They do a lot of keyword stuffing, which means they put in extra keywords that look good, but if you can't speak to them, again, I can't reiterate that enough, then you might just lose out, because, they'd rather see that you're eager to learn than you not being able to speak on something. Tips for working with AI successfully: start with a draft, use editing and suggestions from AI. You maintain your voice, you maintain control. Research AI tools that might be the best fit. Read the fine print, verify information. Do not overshare too much of the personal information. That's always a good thing. And seek human feedback. So making sure that we're not just using AI for everything without, the advisement of your professors. The interview. Okay, so that was the prep work, right? That's the part where you have your resume, you have your LinkedIn profile. Okay, now you have your interview. You want to make sure when you're agreeing to an interview that you confirm if it's on-site or virtual. Ever since COVID happened, there's a lot more virtual than before COVID, because it's better access, right? It's easier to jump on an interview that's virtual, but some companies that are doing more on-site are popping up now again. So you want to make sure that you don't think it's virtual and it's on-site, and now you're losing the opportunity because of miscommunication. You want to ask who's conducting the interview. When you get that information, it's a good thing to go and look at their LinkedIn profile, just so you familiarize yourself with who you're interviewing with. It gives you a good perspective. Ask if it's going to be a one-on-one or if it's a panel. And then how long is the interview scheduled for? If it's on site, sometimes candidates like to ask for a tour of the facility. You want to see where it is or what it looks like, where you would be working. It gives you a good perspective as to what the future would look like working there. It also shows managers sometimes that you're interested and you're curious, as long as time allots, right? If the interview is an hour long and it's at the end of the interview, you can ask them, but be understanding if there wasn't time allotted for that type of step. Okay, so background and work history questions. Tell me a little bit about your background. Keep this job related. Do not go on off too many tangents. Keep it think about how you can connect what your experience is to what you're interviewing for, right? You want to make sure that it stays relevant, be descriptive but concise. The interview can stop you for too many details, or I've gotten feedback when I speak to the manager after an interview with the candidate, and they're like, we asked a question, it was never concise. There was a roundabout way where they actually lost what the question was. So you don't want to have that type of feedback, because science is concise, science is detailed, science is precise most of the time, right? Your data is, it's to a certain degree. So it's the same way when you're interviewing. You want to stay concise. You want to make sure that you give the detail that's requested, but not go into it too much, because then sometimes if you talk for too long, the manager might have another question and you might not have time for it, but depending on how much time. Technical questions. Talk to me about your experience with said technology or said testing technique. Be honest about what you've done. If you haven't done it, it is okay to say, I have not personally done this much. I did it during a lab for this class, but other than that, I never did it again. I can brush up on that, and I'm sure with training, I would be a great candidate for this role. You know, it's about being honest and being, it's accountability. They know that in that case, if you have a question about something, you'll go to them and you won't, hide because you don't know how to do something. So be prepared to talk about anything on your resume or in the job description. Make sure you look over the job description before your interview. Sometimes candidates have multiple interviews and then they forget what, not maybe it's nerves, but last year, a couple of months ago, I'll give this example. A couple of months ago, a candidate, this was the final interview after 3 other interviews with different team members. The final interview was with the CEO, and the CEO only does interviews to make sure that it's a personality match for what the company is building. The candidate mixed up who she was speaking to and ended up calling him the lab manager, and he was the CEO of the company. So you want to make sure that cost her. Everyone before him loved this candidate, thought the candidate's skills were great, the background was there, everything was in line. But because of a mistake of not making sure that she was prepared for that final interview, it cost her the offer. I already knew that I already had the offer before that interview, but that was the last interview that needed just to be like, okay, after that interview, I get the call, present the offer. I couldn't present the offer after that. So it's very important to make sure you know who you're talking to and you're talking about the job description. Attire, it's okay to be overdressed. And when I say overdressed, I mean to a certain extent, right? You don't want to go in like prom attire, or a tuxedo, or a nice suit is good. For girls, I would recommend not to do too high of a heel. A lot of these companies, the floor is slippery because it gets cleaned very often. So you do not want to not be able to walk through a manufacturing floor with inappropriate shoes. So just make sure that you're clean, you're neat, you look put together. It's also, that's the first impression, right? When they see you in person. Scents, some people are sensitive to scent, so don't do too much on the colognes or the perfumes. Just keep it simple on that part. Go in with the positive attitude, avoid inappropriate language. These are kind of things that should be common sense, but I want to make sure that we say them. No inappropriate language, avoid veering off topic. This is the same thing that I meant with the concise answers. And then save the money conversation for the offer phase. You don't want to go in there sometimes it comes off as the impression that the only reason you're interviewing there is because of a certain pay range that they're offering versus the position itself. So if you talk about money too soon, it could be a little bit of off-putting. Okay. So there's always an HR or talent acquisitions. You'll hear those two very often during hiring phase. In this case, you guys are doing internships, so some are paid, some are unpaid. Right, Dr. Porter? I think so. Okay.
Yes.
Ask questions. It's a big one. It shows enthusiasm, it shows excitement, and it shows you're engaged in the conversation. A lot of managers love when people ask questions, more about describing culture, talk about their experience, ask them about their experience with the company, ask them what type of candidate they're looking for as far as soft skills, like what would be an ideal candidate or what would make a successful candidate for them. It gives you good insight for future if you don't end up with that position or that internship. And then it does help build your confidence when you're going into another interview, right? You're like, okay, they said that they really like this, so you think about that more. These are a couple of questions that they like and what we always suggest. How's performance measured? That's another one of what makes a candidate successful, and what areas of my background can I further clarify if you think that maybe one of your answers wasn't what you would have wanted to say. Because a lot of the times I know I go into, say, an interview or a conversation, and then I think back, oh shoot, I should have answered this way. It's okay to do it at the end of the interview. They'll always ask you if you have any questions. You could say, was there anything that I said that you might need some clarity on? I'd love to speak on it further. And then they'll tell you. Okay. And then it's always nice to ask what the next steps are. It gives you a good idea of when you should expect an answer or who you should expect an answer from. So it does give you some good insight there. Follow up. I think someone else also said this. Sending a quick thank you note is always a great thing to do. It shows that you are thinking about the interview even after, that it's a nice courtesy, and a lot of managers appreciate it for the sole fact that they get to, not every candidate does it anymore. I have had managers who tell me the reason we picked this candidate is because they sent a thank you note, because the skills were similar to the other candidate, the experience was the same, the personalities were the same, similar. The thank you note, that extra step sometimes can be a good little sprinkle, or the cherry on top. I'll do that instead of the sprinkle. And then here is an example. This is just the title of my LinkedIn. As you can see that I work for Yo because I have their branding and my focus is on life science. I have a brief summary of who I am for everyone looking at me as a professional. Where I'm located. I have, this one is a link just to what you see here is a link just to what services we provide at my company. And then I have, of course, where I went and where my current company. If you guys want to save my contact information, feel free to do so. If you ever want to, if you ever want to send me your resume for me to give you some feedback or some tips and tricks on it, I'm glad to do so. And then if you want to follow me on LinkedIn, there is a QR code that easily connects you to my page, and you can reach out to me there as well. Okay.
Thank you so
Perfect.
much.
I think I went a little over, but I'm available for a few questions if you.
Yeah, we
would
started
like.
a little bit late. We
Yes.
had a question in the chat. Do we need to put makeup on for interview?
Yeah, I always do because I am very pale skinned and sometimes I look like I just woke up. So I put a little bit of blush, and then just to, make myself not look so sleepy. So it is okay to put on makeup. I wouldn't go full glam, right? Where you look like you're going to go to a night out. You still want to look professional. So makeup is okay to wear. If
Thank
you
you.
are not comfortable with makeup, that is also okay. It's personal preference. It's not gonna give you or take away a position from what I've heard.
There was
think
one
I
more
often-
earlier. For sales and research design, what is the job opening ratio in the job marketing?
Say that again. Oh, let me go back
It's in
and
the
see.
chat. Yeah, it's in the chat from Jian Tan. For sales and research design, what is the job opening ratio in the job marketing?
For research design. Okay, so for are you talking about research and development or actual research design? Because there's a few different when and maybe Dr. Porter, we might want to talk about I could do a presentation of the different departments in a biotech company because I think as a student, we always think about research because we're in an academia setting, right? So we're always thinking of doing research. In a company like job demanding, um, there's a lot of research and development positions, but not as much as every other position in a company. For example, I'll say there's one research position to four in other departments. A lot of it is manufacturing. Research is a lot of the times focused on maybe PhD grads, master's grads, people with master's degrees because they've done some type of research project by themselves and they've done the research design themselves with the guidance of a PI, I'm sure, but they have that experience versus someone who's fresh out of college with just a bachelor's degree will not necessarily be able to design research for drug development, for example. So it's a little bit of difference, whereas sometimes you could be in a research and development lab under someone who's doing the study design. There's also what's called study design in clinical, which is companies that are doing research and development, but they have a team that's focused on taking the concept into clinical trials. And then there's someone who does study design for a clinical trial study. So there's two very different things. But research versus every other position, I'm gonna say it's one, and it's a pretty competitive. Usually, research positions are the most competitive.
It's very insightful. I was wondering, are you okay with us showing the recording of our
Yes.
presentation? Okay, wonderful.
Yes.
So that is great. There was still one other interview. If you just have a moment, if Unanya asks
For
for
in-person
yeah.
interviews, do we have to straight out introduce ourselves, elevator, or do you wait for their interview to ask us to? Usually they ask you. That's usually you introduce yourself, right? You just say your names and they introduce themselves. They usually give a little bit of background of what their position is, and then they ask you to tell them a little bit about yourself. The only time I would say you introduce yourself with an elevator pitch is in a networking and an in-person networking event because you want to be casual, but you also want them to know what you do, right? Usually if I'm in a networking setting, I'll introduce myself. I might give an elevator pitch, but it might be more of a conversation where I'm asking them, oh, what do you do? What company you work for? Then, it allows for that. but I would usually they ask like tell us a little bit about yourself is usually the first question. So have a concise elevator pitch once they ask you, but you don't have to straight out lead the interview because you are interviewing with them, so they usually lead those type of questions. Did I answer that for you? Okay.
Yes, thank you so much. We are
Mhm.
already like a lot of time over time.
Mhm.
You already give us a great idea for the next invitation to talk.
Mhm.
So I will make sure we stay connected. You give so much hands-on, real life advice, of course, speaking from your experiences, finding job candidates for other companies. So I want to also, for us all, to thank you very much. We have
You're
your contact information, and Dr. Won, would you like to say something for closing, or
No, that was just fantastic, Maria. Thank you so much. I can tell that the students are all taking notes, I think, frantically, because that was a lot of really great
a lot of
information.
information. Yeah.
Yes, compacted. No, really good advice. You know, I think everyone really wanted to make sure they took those down because I thought that was excellent. These are all the things that I think are swimming, questions that I think are swimming in the students' minds, and I can definitely see that helping them. So thank you very much. And
My pleasure.
yeah, I hope the students have your contact information so we can reach out if there's more questions coming out of this. So.
Yeah, and if not, Dr. Porter has it as well. So
right, and then we'll
she
post
can
the
go ahead and
recording.
share.
Yes,
Mhm.
thank you so much, and thank you for making the time.
My
It's
pleasure. I'm
wonderful.
glad I was able to move some things around so I was able to be here.
Yeah.
I had a backup plan, but I really wanted to make sure that I was the one presenting.
That's
Oh.
so nice. So thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for being here. With this, we are concluding the meeting, and we'll see you soon again around. And thank you, Maria. Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
everybody.